Welcome to the Community Connections podcast with Jeff Newgard. Jeff is the president and CEO of Bank of Idaho. As an experienced community leader with a demonstrated history in the banking industry, he is fascinated with authentic and real conversations and establishing long-term relationships. Community Connections with Jeff Newgard podcast is Mr. Newgard's opportunity to do just that. Connect with local business owners and leaders to hear their stories. Jeff's slogan is "People Bank with People." With that, sit back, relax, and listen to the unique stories of your neighbors, colleagues, friends, and community connections. Today's guest is Vicki Elison, owner of KV Inc. KV Inc. is a corporation headquartered here in Idaho since 1984. Enjoy this community conversation as Vicki connects with Jeff.
Vicki, thank you so much for agreeing to have this interview and to tell your story. You inspire me. And when I think of you, the reason you inspire me is you break about every mold there is.
I've been told that before.
Yes, and so I wanted to explore a little bit about how that happened. How did you become this person that breaks the mold and does things that normal women of your generation did? I mean, you are quite a horsewoman. You're a businesswoman. How did that all start?
Well, it's funny that we bring this up today. My husband and I have been talking a lot about this lately. How this all got started. I started riding when I was 5 years old, and I rode with my dad. And I have 3 siblings, none of which care anything about the horses or the cattle.
Really?
So I was my dad's boy, and I rode with him from the time I was 5 years old. And we'd be gone for hours, tending, moving cattle or tending, doing what we had to do. And he always called me sister girl. And he used to tell me, sister girl, you can do anything you want. You can do anything you want to do. You just have to do it. And he taught me about how to handle money. And the first thing he taught me was, or the first time I really remember any of this, was that I got a job at the restaurant, at a little restaurant down in Territon, because I was raised out in Montague, and this was a big deal to have a summer job.
Yes.
So he told me, he said, all right, sister girl, you go to work. He says, I want you to get a book, and I want you to keep track of all the tips that you make and all your wages, keep all the money you make. And he said, when you get done this summer, I'll go and talk to Sis. And Sis was the lady that owned the bank, or owned the restaurant. He says, I'll go talk to Sis. And if you've done a good job, and she's, if you did what she wanted and everything, he said, I'll match your money.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, wow. What he did, he taught me to keep track of money.
Oh, sure. Bookkeeping.
He taught me that it was important that I write this stuff down every day.
Yeah.
And this was when I was like 17 years old.
Okay.
And another thing we always did, I always had a cow that was mine. And I could ride with my dad, and I'd pick one out that was, well, my cow for a long time had horns. So I knew which one she was. So in the fall, when the cattle would ship, I'd get the money out of one calf. And we'd cash a check. And we had the zippered bank bags, and we had a safe in our home. And so the bags would be kept down in one of the lower drawers of the safe. So if I was going to a school, like a ball game or something, I could go get money out of my bag. But that was what I had to spend. I couldn't go ask them for more money. That was what I had. So they, from a very early age, taught me in that way also.
Yeah. So you learned the value of money.
I learned how to take care of my money and make it last.
Yes.
And then, of course, the deal with matching the money with my wages and my tips that summer, that was a big deal, because it might have been, I don't know, it might have been $500 or $600. Might have been that much. Wow. But at the time, it was wow. It was a lot of money.
So let's go back for a second. When your dad said, you can do anything, just go and do it. And that you're 5 years old and you don't know the difference. So all you knew was that you could do things. But then as you start going through life, you had to hit some barriers where people are saying, well, you're a girl. You can't do that.
Oh, I've hit lots of barriers. Yes.
So what did you do with that?
I didn't have a lot of issues until my husband and I got into this construction business that we've owned. And construction is a man's world. It's not a woman's world. And I butted heads with quite a few people. And sometimes I just had to learn to gulp it down and go on. All right?
Okay.
But it made me stronger. It made me figure out ways to get around that stigma of being a woman in a man's world.
Yeah.
And I always tried to act, and I'm not very good at being a silver-tongued devil. I'm not politically correct, okay, a lot. But I've tried to learn how to do that and to do things in a way that's not offensive. To ask somebody to do something, not tell them. All right, act in that manner. And by virtue of that, I think that I learned that people learned to respect me. And I was good at what I did. I've kept books all my working life. That's all I've done to make money is keep books.
Yeah.
And so, of course, we started out with a hand set of books and went to computers and so I know all about keeping a hand set of books and posting to a general ledger and keeping sales journals and payroll journals and all that sort of thing.
Yes.
So I see all this in my head as I work on the computer, how all this stuff works.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty good at a computer. I can make a program run. I don't know anything about a computer, but
Yeah.
I can at least get it to tell me what I want it to tell me.
Sure.
All right. But back to the barriers.
Yes.
You've just had to, I think, not take any of this stuff personal. You absolutely could not take it personal or you were done.
Yeah.
You had to understand that those people didn't know me. And yes, I'm a bit of a break the mold kind. I do write. I've done that all my life. I've kept books. I've helped run this company. And
writing on cattle, I mean, at a young age, herding and doing brandings, I'm sure.
Well, and see, one thing I remember too that about my dad telling me this stuff, he would give me jobs to do. Like, okay, I need you to go, like in the summertime, they'd be busy in the hay fields. So he'd tell me I need to get on my horse and I need to go check where all the salt was. And we'd have wooden boxes that the salt blocks would be in. Of course, I knew where all that stuff was. So that was my job, was to go and check all the salt boxes. So I could tell my dad which ones needed salt and which ones were okay. So that when he'd take the salt out, he wouldn't spend a lot of time looking because I'd already checked him.
Oh,
He gave me responsibility.
At a young age.
At a young age.
Yeah.
I remember another time we were out some cattle and he found them. And he hauled me up on the desert in the stock truck and we backed up to a bump and jumped the horse out. And this might have been like 3 or 4 miles from home. Okay, sister girl, you bring him home. Well, that was a big job and I'm only 8 or 9 years old.
Oh, is that right?
But I brought the cattle home. But see, he taught me how to do things alone, giving me responsibility and inspiring in me self-confidence.
Yes.
That I could do it.
And you just were raised that way.
I was just raised that way.
So
yes.
as you're interfacing, as you're going through life, and especially in the cowboy world, especially in brandings and you interface with different cowboys, I mean that was kind of a man's world too, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And now I was never taught how to rope. I still don't know how to rope.
Oh, okay.
A reason for that: my dad lost a leg.
Yes.
When I was 18 months old. And he was a really good roper. But he was always afraid of me having a rope for fear it'd get tangled up and I'd be in an accident or something because he was not able to rope anymore. But what happens is that I would go to the ranch like on branding day.
Yes.
And the guys would all be there. And they could immediately see that I knew how to handle the cattle, that I knew what to do. I knew how to get them in the creel. I knew how to sort the cows and calves off.
Yeah.
And so that part of it, they immediately could see I knew what I was doing. So nobody bothered me.
Yeah.
They just, because I knew how to do my job.
Well, it didn't sound like you paid much attention to it either. You just did your thing.
I just did it, and if somebody said anything, well, okay, fine, and I just go right along.
Yeah.
Ignore them.
Right.
And that's what I've done a lot with a lot
Okay.
of this stuff, is just ignore it and go on. Because I knew it wasn't personal. That was a hard lesson to learn, but I did learn it.
Yes.
Yes.
So when was that first time that you learned that tough lesson?
I think that it was after we were in this construction business.
Okay, so it was later in life.
Yeah, it was later in life. And we had one gentleman that supervised work that our men did.
Mm-hmm.
And he absolutely would not deal with me. And I used to get so mad. I'd say, "You old son of a gun." Well, that isn't what I
Wasn't
said.
the gun.
But anyway, that you
That's
get the
right.
gist of the conversation. And it finally dawned on me one day, again, it's that generation.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know me, so this is not personal. It's just his generation, and he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know how to deal with it, didn't know how to deal with me.
Yes. So that had to be kind of freeing, just to.
Oh, it was like, shoo. It was.
Yeah.
It was. To finally come to the decision in my mind that it was simply not personal.
Yes. And you didn't have to own that.
Right. And then it wasn't long afterwards that this gentleman and I got along.
Really.
And we're still great friends. And
Wow.
he's been retired for many years. And I run into him occasionally, he and his wife, and he'll hug me and glad to see me. And
Wow.
we've become great friends.
Wow. So that
And
just
we had a
broke that-
rocky start.
Yes.
But I enabled that to happen, I think, because I didn't get mad about it.
Yes. That's right. That was the freedom that allowed you then to have a friendship.
Right. Right. It
Yeah, if
absolutely
you had
was.
harbored that anger and
I
that-
would have never allowed him to get close to me.
that's right.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. So then you go forward in your business, and like you said, with all the construction people, and not only in it, but you're running it. I mean, you're quite a businesswoman. I mean, you manage all the money to this day. You're a great money manager. I think even your husband relies on that.
Yes, I manage all the home money too, besides the business money.
Yeah.
Yes, and everybody involved with this decision-making process, they've all learned to come to me and I tell the guys, this is one thing that I've always done working in this business. The men don't tell me what kind of a computer to have, because I'm using the computer. I'm going to buy the computer that best suits my needs.
Yes.
So I'm not going to tell them what kind of a backhoe to buy,
There you
because I don't run it,
That's fair. That's fair.
And so they find a backhoe that the guys do that they want or need,
Yeah.
then they'll bring it to me, and then we'll look at the financial side of that.
Right.
And then we can make a decision there based on what we need.
Yes.
And that has worked very, very well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, you have such an independence where you're going to get the computer, you're going to get the tools you need. You're not going to have anybody telling you. But then you're respectful on the other side.
I have to be, yes,
Yeah.
because a business can't run without employees. What would you have here if you didn't have employees at
Oh,
Bank of
gosh.
Idaho?
Yeah. Well, they're
And
they're
so those employees are very, very important to us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a little bit of company history back in 2007 and 8 when
Yes.
this economy tanked. My husband and I put everything we owned into this business to keep it alive. We lost our 401ks.
Oh.
I lost a sizable inheritance. I didn't lose it. I put it into the company to keep it alive.
Right.
All we were doing was trying to protect these people that work for us. We didn't want to shut the doors and turn these men loose that had been loyal to us, because we've been in business since 1983.
Yes.
And so I couldn't, and Ken couldn't either, my husband. He just could not allow those men to be turned loose when they've been so loyal to us.
Did they realize what you?
I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't anything we ever really talked to them about.
Yeah.
It's just what Ken and I had to do to keep the business going.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got to praise the bank. James Allen during this time, and still is, helps us with the loans. And I don't know what we'd have done if it hadn't have been for James. James stuck his neck out for us day after day, deciding which checks we could let through and which ones we had to turn back and go back through the system again till we had money. James and I were on the phone for a long time every day.
Oh.
And he, I'm sure, stretched the rules some. I'm sure.
Well, what I found fascinating too is how long you go back with the bank. You said you're number
58.
58 and opened in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? And,
yes.
And bank opened in 1985. So
right.
You've been with us pretty much
right
from the beginning.
Well, my cousin Ralph Hartwell was one of the founding people of the bank. He in association with Bill Rigby.
Yeah.
And of course, we were buying all of our insurance from my cousin Ralph.
Sure.
And so, of course, when this bank started, Ralph talked to us about coming over here. And we were at First Security Bank, and I wasn't real happy with them. They had a I don't give a shit kind of attitude, and I didn't like it, So we came to Bank of Idaho.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's real close to 34 years.
Yeah.
That we've been here.
Long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, so you weathered that storm.
We weathered the storm.
But then it came back, right?
And we're booming.
Yes.
Just booming. And
great.
just as busy as we can be. And we're so thankful.
Oh, well, we love you. I admire you because of, it takes a lot of grit to go through tough times.
It does.
Went through that too.
And I don't mean to brag, but it does. It was very hard to every week not knowing if you had enough money to make those men's payroll.
When you didn't even know what the future looked like. Things were so uncertain.
No, everything was so uncertain. We didn't dare buy new equipment. We have a mechanic that is wonderful, and he patched the equipment together. And when we started to come out of this thing, we've had to buy so much equipment because our stuff was worn out.
Yeah.
But we're about to the point now where, we've pretty well got things upgraded.
Yes.
Of course, you're always upgrading equipment. You're always, but we've got it in much better condition today.
Yeah.
Much, much better.
Yeah. Well, that grit, it just reminds me of how you were raised and the stories
Absolutely.
you've told about your dad.
Yes.
And not having his leg and
right.
about the stump being bloodied. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that? About how you would ride and what that meant to you.
Yes, and Dad would ride, and he couldn't put that leg in a stirrup, so his leg would be out like this, and that's how he'd ride all day. Well, if you've ever ridden a horse, part of what you do is you balance off your legs.
Right.
And the cheeks of your butt sit in that saddle, all right? But with him, he was always cocked to one side. So one side would get more pressure on it than the other. And then he would sweat, of course, in the summertime and get blisters on that stump. And now this is I thought it was interesting. There was a gentleman that lived down to Mud Lake that was a World War II veteran. And he had a leg gone. His was the opposite side. And he used to get Stump Socks. And these socks were about yay long. And they'd actually fit up over the stump of that leg.
Oh.
And so he'd have that sock, and then he'd go down in, then he'd put it down into the wooden part of his leg.
Yes.
Well, this gentleman that it was the World War II veteran, he would get wool stump socks from the Veterans Administration. And they were outstanding quality.
Oh.
And so my dad always wore a lace-up shoe on the good leg. And so my dad would buy a new pair of shoes. So he'd go down and take the other shoe to that man.
There you go.
Because they happened to be the same size.
Oh, gosh.
So he kept him in new shoes.
Yes.
And then that gentleman would give my dad the Stump Socks.
Oh.
And so my dad always had great Stump Socks.
But he would ride all day.
Oh, all day with us. All day with us.
Yeah.
And I'll share a story about when Ken first started riding with us. My husband,
Yeah.
yes. So this would have been in the fall of 1980. And we'd been horseback all day, and we had cattle strung out probably for a mile. And I wasn't even with them when this happened. But some of the guys up in front of that, what Ken could see, my husband could see, they were getting off the horses and walking because they were getting so stiff. And Ken said he was thinking about doing the same thing. And about that time, my dad rides up alongside of him and slaps him on the back. And he says, "Looky there, Ken, we're separating the men from the boys."
Oh, he's so glad he didn't get down.
And Ken said if he'd have been 30 seconds later, I'd have been on the ground walking, he said. But that's what...
But he stayed on then.
But he stayed on. Oh, yeah, he didn't get off the horse. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. It just sounds like you were born with grit, around toughness.
I was, because my father came from very humble circumstances, you know.
Yeah.
And he put together this lovely ranch and all the cattle and the farms and the machinery and all those things.
Yeah.
And I think because I was the one that liked what he liked, I naturally gravitated to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent more time with him than any of my siblings did.
Yeah. So he made a big impression on you and
Huge impression on me.
fingerprints all over you.
Oh, all over me. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. To this day.
Yes.
Yes.
You think of him and
Every day.
oh.
Something will come up and I'll think, well, that's the way Joe Hartwell would have done it. Or how would Joe Hartwell do it?
Oh, that's neat.
So, yes, a huge impression on me.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I find that we have in common is that one of your favorite things to do in the world is to get on horseback to this day.
To this day.
And ride on cattle. You've sent me pictures.
Yes,
What
to
is
get
it?
on a horse
Yeah.
and go for a trail ride, it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. But what my very favorite thing in the whole world is to get on the horse and go do something with the cattle.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And why?
It's because it's what I loved to do when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
I've loved to do it my whole life. If I had my choice of things to do, that's my very favorite thing to do.
Yeah. It just is like the whole world melts away, doesn't it?
It does. It's way better than a therapist's couch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has solved a lot of problems.
And it takes your concentration. I mean, not only are you worried about, because wrecks can happen so easily
Yes.
with horses.
Yes.
You've told me about.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those wrecks.
Why
Yes.
don't you tell me about the stream? I love this the stream story. That was fairly recent, wasn't it?
Well, that was 25 years
Oh,
ago.
25. Okay.
No, it wasn't too recent.
Okay.
No. I had a big bay horse. He was quite tall.
Yeah.
And the guys had to cross a canal. And out there in Montague, that water is all pumped from deep water wells.
Okay.
And there's canals out there where our cattle are in the summer. And so we'd have to cross those canals. And they were deep. So you always crossed where the cattle did because you knew that the cattle could get across there. So you made sure that, because the footing would be good.
Right.
So anyway, we're crossing the stream, and there's my husband and one other man ahead of me. And they're on shorter horses, so they're getting their feet wet, right? So me being a smart ass, I start down in there, and I got my spurs on, right? And I reach up and put my feet up on my horse's shoulder so I can go get my feet wet, right? Well, I'm fine until he starts up on the other bank and he starts lunging.
Well, you start teasing the guys ahead of you
Yeah,
first.
I was about, hey, look here, guys, my feet are dry, ha, ha, ha. And I'm fine till the horse starts up on the other side of the bank. And he starts lunging, and when he does, I'm jabbing him in the shoulder.
With your spurs.
With my spurs. And I did that 3 or 4 times. And I probably had a 91-point ride, I would guess.
That's right.
Until I got bucked off.
Which wasn't pretty.
No, I got bucked off and I landed flat on my back on a lava rock. and I broke a rib and collapsed a lung. Ended up, I had to be life flighted into Ermac because I went into shock. Because you're out in the middle of nowhere, and
Right.
the ambulance didn't know where to come to get me, and because they didn't have a clue.
Right.
And so ambulance finally came and they got me, but they couldn't give me any pain medication. And I don't know if you've ever had a collapsed lung, but it's pretty painful. And so I finally went into shock from the pain. And so then he called Life Flight and brought me to town.
Oh.
And so I didn't be a smart ass after that about crossing the creek or crossing the canals. That was enough of that stuff.
That's right.
I behaved myself, kept my foot in the stirrups.
But those wrecks can happen so easily,
They do.
so quickly.
They do.
And so,
Yes. So yes, when you're a horseback and you've got a job to do, you have to read the cattle and understand how to go to turn them. And of course, this is stuff I've done. So,
yes.
but I have to concentrate on what I'm doing and pay attention where my horse is, and not put him in a bad place where he might fall or something like that. So you don't think about anything else.
Yes.
And so you have 4 or 5 or 6 hours of total freedom.
That's right.
And how do you, I don't know how else to get that,
Right.
but getting on that horse and going to do some work.
Yeah. And all the nature around you and how
All
beautiful
the beautiful
it is.
scenery. And so we're very blessed that we have these great friends that allow us to go up to Spencer
Okay.
and ride with them and help move cattle. And we're going to be doing some cowboying because they're going to come out of there the 10th.
Oh, good.
And so that's getting really close here. So Ken and I will both go because Ken likes it too.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll go and spend 2 or 3 days probably,
Yeah.
helping them to move cattle.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So I'll get some really good therapy here right
there
quickly.
you go. That'll be wonderful.
Yep.
Good. Well,
And I have a great horse to ride. So
yes.
I have a great horse to ride.
So you're riding the one I like too?
Oh, I'm riding Sundance.
Sundance.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm riding Sundance.
We share a love for a horse.
Yep, we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the one that I ride in the arena at the War Bonnet, which I sure appreciate all your help. You get everything all prepared for me, and
Oh, yeah, he's
Kinda
a busy man the night of the War Bonnet Roundup. So, yeah, we try to have the horse saddled and ready
oh
to go.
dear, you kind of spoiled me. I feel a little bit like a greenhorn. But
No, he's no greenhorn at all. But it's our pleasure
Oh, thank
because
you.
it's fun to share something that you love with somebody else
Yes.
that likes it like you do.
Yes.
That
I
makes
do.
it really fun. So
Yeah.
it's fun. It's like, wow, I'm going to get to go do this because this gentleman likes it like I do.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to
There's
share
nothing-
him.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. There's nothing like it to me either, is getting on horseback and looking at the country and the people that are into it too, like the Smalls and
Yes.
some of these other
Yes.
like people up in Spencer that they're just the
They
salt
were
of the earth
raised
best
like
people.
I was. They understand this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said in today's world about cowboys.
Yeah.
They have a code of honor that's different. And I'm not belittling anyone,
Right.
but it's different from children that are raised in a urban
Yeah.
setting that don't have chores,
It's interesting.
that don't have a place to run and play when they're little. They're raised in apartments and things like that,
Yeah.
where the kids outside, just like, well, I learned to drive a truck with a stick shift. There's a lot of kids today that don't know a thing about a stick shift. Don't know
Yeah.
anything about it, couldn't drive a car with one. That's how I learned to drive.
But there's
And-
this code, this cowboy code as they call it.
Yes, the cowboy code. Yes.
How have you translated that into your business world?
I think the cowboy code is to be very respectful. I mean, we have a lot of friends in that cowboy world,
Yes.
and it's always yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am, or thank you, ma'am, or
Yeah.
that's how these young men all interact with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the lifestyle and it doesn't matter if they ride bulls or saddle bronc horses or they rope or anything. They all kind of have this code because they like this lifestyle, and that goes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're very, very fortunate that I have association into that world.
Mm-hmm.
Ken and I love being around those young people that we know that
Yeah.
that live that way.
Well, but you have it ingrained in your DNA and in the fabric of who you are.
Yes.
And I think about part of the cowboy code too is honesty, integrity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Doing the right thing, even if it hurts.
Yes. Even if it's financially hurtful or emotionally hurtful, you still do the right thing.
Yeah. Which is what you did through the recession. You put what you needed into it, everything you had, you were all in.
We were all in, yes.
And you went for it.
And thank goodness that somebody was smiling on us, and we've come out on the other side. We're very blessed. We think we're very blessed. But it might have something to do with the fact that we were all in taking care of these people.
Yeah, you worked.
And it was a daily struggle.
Yes.
It was. And lots of sleepless nights and tossing and turning and worrying, but it was all worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Vicki, thank you so much for taking the time today and for sharing your story. It's a beautiful one and one that inspires me to work hard and to uphold that cowboy code, if you will.
Yes, I think that's so important. That this cowboy way of life, obviously the way I'm dressed, I like it, but this is what I feel the most comfortable in, is my cowboy boots.
Yes.
And
that's right.
That's.
Well, I wish I could have that gear on myself, but you got to dress for what you're doing, right?
Right.
When you're out riding, you better not be in a suit.
Well, and when one of you young men, whoever it was that called me, I thought, well, I've never done anything like this before, so I'm going to go and be comfortable. Okay?
Oh, that's great.
So I'm glad I was okay.
Yes, you're perfect. Thank you, Vicki, so much.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And it's our pleasure, and we're so happy that we are here with the bank and have the great working relationship we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's good on both ends.
Yes, I think so.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Community Connections with Jeff Newgard, where every episode you hear unique stories of your neighbors, colleagues, friends, and community connections. You can find our podcasts on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and other popular platforms. Subscribe to our channel to keep up to date on all future conversations. Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.